So today, so when I was getting ready for today, it was it was reminiscent of when we used to do the shows for like 8 hours, and we would be like, it would be like a 4 hour fucking cook, right? So it would be a subject, because it's real heavy, and so we'd be talking about it for 4 hours. So that's what today's kind of topic reminds me of. It's a lot to it, and so I'm gonna do my best to keep it simple, right? Because it connects to a lot of stuff, all right. And so I'm gonna do my best to not only keep it simple, but I'm gonna try to talk you guys through it to help you guys connect what's going on. I got a lot of clips, and so we'll be talking in between the clips. So if you got questions or you want clarification about something that happened, put it in the chat. Or if you're on stage, then just say something in between clips while we're talking. What else? It was something else. The content is kind of dark. I intentionally left out a lot of the details. So we're gonna talk some details about some of the dark stuff, but I intentionally left out a lot. Okay, and so like if you guys have seen anything regarding this, and y'all be like, "Yo, but it was way more gruesome than that." Yes, I know. But when I was preparing for it last night, I was kind of uh I was doing some like getting ready, and it got to one of the parts, and I was like, I'm not finna listen to this before I go to bed. I literally stopped working because I didn't want to go through this part of it before I went to bed. I'm not finna have this shit on my brain while I'm going to sleep. So that's how dark this shit gets. So I'm gonna try to, well, some of it's up in here, but not a lot. So I tried to take out a lot of the personal accounts and stick with strictly um, the overarching story, because there are a lot of personal accounts. You said, "Don't do you like the mainstream media?" No, it's not do you like the mainstream media, but some of this shit, man, man. So when we get to one of the parts, I'll give you guys a brief description of some of the shit that I took out, and yeah, it
You gotta
was,
be talking about the pogroms, bro. You
huh?
gotta be talking about the pogroms when they was rounding them up. You gotta be.
You ever seen the account of when they killed the czar
Yeah,
and the
a
family?
couple of them. That's what I was. The other day I was talking about Rasputin. That's just one account.
Yeah. Yeah, so some of this shit, it gets dark. Like the shit that they was doing is fucking wild. So, um, so I'm and I'm not doing you like the mainstream media. I'm giving you the story. I'm just taking out some of the gory details because I don't want y'all to have the same issue that I was gonna have. I don't want to send y'all off to sleep with some of this bullshit on y'all brain. Like it's fucked up. So I'm gonna give you the story though, and that's what's important. It's a story. Um, and so the other thing is I want to try to untangle some shit because it is something that's tangled up that um we often just kind of use it as a blanket term, and it's way more complicated than the way we use it. So um we I got a lot I'm trying to do with this. So y'all gonna have to bear with me. It's the first time I'm actually talking about it. So it's the first cook I've ever done on it. So a lot of the stuff that y'all hear me talk about, I've done several times, and so I kind of know what needs to be talked about. This one's my first time talking about it, so y'all got to bear with me doing this one. All right. So what we're talking about today is the Bolshevik Revolution. All right. So this was the event that um, it structured Russia how it is today. Right. It's structured Russia like what you see of Russia right now is a direct result of the Bolshevik Revolution. Much to my surprise, because as I was going through it, I was wondering. I'm like, yo, how do we go from this to what Russia is now, right? And what I it started to towards the end, and I'll get to it for you guys too. It made sense towards the end. I was like, oh, that's how we got here. Got you. All right. So, one of the things I want to start to detangle first is the word Jews. Right? You're going to hear it a lot. You hear it a lot. Right?
Fled,
Say it again.
fled.
Oh, hey, yo, hold on. Dick. You know what?
The satanic Jews.
So and I think this is what's important in this conversation and any conversation that you have going forward, even though it gets confusing. There's a difference between the Jews and
The satanic Jews.
there's a difference. Okay. And so this also is important when it comes to the Holocaust and what happened in Germany and even what's going on right now. You got to understand that the Jews are not homogenous. That's the first thing you got to understand. The Jews are not homogenous, right? And apparently um, neither are the Muslims, right? Talking to Hess, she talks about there are Quran only Muslims, and then you have Muslims that read the Quran and the Hadith. So it's people that do different things. That's how you get like different sects, right? And so with the Jews, there are different types of Jews, and so essentially, there are a sect of people. Well, the first thing is this: Jew is not a race. It's not an ethnicity, and that's one of the things that gets convoluted first, right? So people talk about being a Jew as if it's a race. They'll say, "Oh yeah, he's half white and half Jewish." How the fuck are you half white and half Jewish? That's like being half white and half Baptist.
Half pregnant.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I'm half black and half Presbyterian. Nigga, what? It's a religion. Period. All right? It's a fucking religion. And so, like in life, as we go about life, people treat it because if you ask a Jewish person this, they'll talk about it like it's a fucking race. Or they'll try to get slick and say some shit like, oh no, it's an ethnicity. It ain't none of that shit. You can't be born Jewish. It's a religion that you practice. Okay? And so listening to people talk, it can be confusing. And so that's lesson number one. If you take nothing from this whole conversation, understand that Jew is a religion. Jewish is a religion. It's somebody who practices Judaism. That's why you can convert to Judaism. That's why there are black Jews and white Jews and African Jews and European Jews, American Jews. All right? They have
But
different
but
cultures, different ethnicities, but they're
well,
all
Arab
I
Jews.
Jews.
have a question. A lot of people have the understanding that Jews are from the tribe of Judah. So how do you come to
So
that conclusion?
um that's people who practice so these people practice a certain religion, right? And so coming from the tribe of Judah, that has nothing to do with being Jewish. Right now, that has nothing to do with being Jewish. All right? If you want to claim that as your heritage, that's cute, but Jewish has nothing to do with that. All right?
Not that's cute.
It is cute, real cute. All right? And it's a huge thing because TV, books, and dude, in some of the clips I'm playing, they're gonna talk about it like you're born into it. Now, inside, how can I put it? The people that we're talking about, they do, however, pay close attention to your bloodline. Okay, y'all hear that? Somebody's stealing ice out my out my fucking refrigerator. Dude, they done broke both ice makers upstairs and downstairs because I got people that they eat ice like a motherfucker. Y'all, dude, I got a house full of women. These people eat ice like a motherfucker. And so they break the fucking ice makers. So upstairs and downstairs, the ice makers are broke. And so they come here to get ice. Until they're gonna do this until they break my ice maker. So what I was saying, they focus on bloodline. And this is where you kind of go back into this, because that's what's important to them. This when you get into like the 13 families and all of that shit and the bloodlines and all of that shit, right? And so even though it's not a religion, I mean it's not a race, they do focus on bloodline. They're very, very, very hyper focused on bloodline and who you're related to. That's
Why?
so that goes back into the origin of who they are, and so that goes and that yeah, this goes back into their origin story, and so I have my thoughts about it, and other people have their thoughts about it. Like there's plenty of conjectures on why they do it. Yeah, I have my thoughts about it, and so but that's beyond the scope of what we're talking about. Like that's a whole deeper discussion that gets into some,
Right.
you know what I'm
Right.
saying?
I was gonna
Yeah, that
add to
gets
that.
into some other shit.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean?
Okay.
But they definitely focus on and keep track of the bloodline, right? And who's related and who's in the blood and who's not. Okay. The other thing that's important to understand is you have the Talmudic Jews, or people who follow the Talmud who claim to be Jews, right? And the non-Talmudic Jews. The Talmudic Jews will kill non-Talmudic Jews. And so a lot of times in history, when you see Jews getting hurt and killed and all of that shit, um, the Talmudic Jews will kill non-Talmudic Jews. They will victimize non-Talmudic Jews. So the Jewish people who don't follow the Talmud, right, they will be sacrificed sometimes. And so that's also important to understand as you look at history. Because sometimes you'll see, oh, these people are targeting Jews. So it wouldn't be Jews targeting Jews. It would have to be somebody else. No, no. If these Jews don't follow the Talmud and these Jews over here do, they will definitely sacrifice them. So these things are, so this helps kind of understand like the events that happen in a lot of different places. Because if you just think, oh, the Jews are the Jews are the Jews, and so they're all kind of one, they're all on the same side and all this shit. Nope. In Germany, you had Jews who were not getting along, right? You have to, yeah, Orthodox Jews do not fuck with Zionism. The Orthodox Jews say that Zionists are godless, meaning they don't have a religion. They consider themselves Jewish, even though they don't have a religion, but they're in the quote unquote bloodline, right? But they don't, like, they're godless. They don't believe in the God of the Bible. And this is important. Does everybody get that part? Everybody, are we cool on that? Anybody got questions? Because you got to understand that to understand what the fuck is about to happen. Everybody cool. So you got so there are different types of Jews, right? You have the religious type, the Torah only Jews, right? And then you have the Talmudic,
The satanic Jews.
all right. And the thing is, when it comes to like the Zionists, like it's more of a political party. You can join that shit, right? You can become a Zionist. Right? I got a clip of
Wait. I can become. I
yeah.
too can be a satanic Jew.
The satanic Jews.
Yes, you can. Um, so when you say who is the largest group, you know what? We don't know. I don't know. I think if I had to take a guess, I would say um it's the Orthodox, but I think the Zionists are growing. I think there's a lot of them. I think there's a lot of them. What do Zionist Jews stand for? Um, what do they want? They want to control the earth. That's what they want. That's who is the engineer of globalism, the one world government, one world order, all of that shit. That's your Zionist Jews. They want to create the prison planet. Okay, that's what they're working to bring about, the prison planet. All right. So that's a good question because you got to know. It always helps to know what somebody's goal is. All right. So yeah. The other thing is, a lot of the Zionists, they like to hide amongst the other Jews so that you can't tell them apart. So they do a lot of hiding amongst other people. And so if you point to the Zionists and say, "Hey, you did wrong," they'll play the victim and be like, "Oh, they're pointing at us. They're saying that we did wrong. The greater Jewish community." You get what I'm saying? And so they hide amongst the other Jews. The other thing is a lot of these Zionists will hide amongst other fucking religions. They'll pretend to be Christians or atheists. Like they don't have to associate with a religion, right? They just associate with the goal of Zionism.
Catholics too.
Say it again, bro. Oh yeah, Catholics, yeah, facts. All right, cool. Um, let's see. Anything else that we need to get to? Want to make sure we're all on the same page as we move forward because the clips I play they're gonna use the word Jews, and so as they say the word Jews, you got to understand which type of Jews they're talking about and who they're speaking about specifically. All right. Um. All right. Where the hell am I at? Where's my? All right. So, let's open up with So this is a general. The first clip I'm going to play is a general overview of what, like, how the shit started. Okay, so it's going to be a lady describing a meeting that happened in. It's not a meeting; it's more of a conference or a dinner that happened in America, where they were talking about the situation in Russia. Okay, so the first clip is going to be a meeting where they were talking about the situation in Russia. All right, before it kind of goes up, where they're warning, where it's more of a warning to um, the Tsar, who is the Romanovs. Okay, so I'm gonna try to keep the names um, simple, so I'm not throwing a lot of names at you. So I'm gonna try to keep it real simple. Okay, so at this time, Russia is controlled by the Romanovs, Tsar Nicholas II. is in control. So if you hear him talk about the Romanovs or the Tsar Nicholas, that's who he's talking about, the guy in charge of Russia. Okay. Um. So here, this is kind of this is the rhetoric that was coming from the United States about Russia.
Wait, before you go,
Yeah.
I think it's important to know that the Russian czars were all rich as fuck, and I don't mean like kind of rich like we think today. Like they were absurdly rich type shit.
Facts. All right. Cool.
Warning to New Russia. Taft commands Jewish efforts for liberated people. Ex-President Taft was a Freemason, by the way, applauded vigorously last night when Jacob H. Schiff, a Rothschild agent, at a dinner of the American Jewish Friends of Free Russia, praised Theodore Roosevelt for his efforts while president to bring the Russian autocracy to a realization of the wrongs committed against Jewish subjects. There was another outburst of applause when Mr. Schiff, introduced to the Toastmaster as a Russian revolutionist, asserted that, in his opinion, the abrogation of the treaty between the United States and Russia because of discrimination against American citizens of Jewish birth was the inspiration which is to a great extent ultimately brought about the overthrow of the Romanovs. Did you know that? America was an inspiration for that. Following the speeches, a resolution was adopted expressing confidence that Russia would not make a separate peace with Germany. I remember the efforts of Theodore Roosevelt, and be it ever to his credit, to bring the Russian autocracy to a realization of its wrongs, said Mr. Schiff. But I remember also that it was under the administration of our honored guest of this evening, ex-President Taft, that the treaty was abrogated. Some of us here have had some heavy moments since the beginning of the present war, feeling that the intrigues which had been organized for a restoration of that treaty might be successful. But I am thankful to say that when the subject was brought to the attention of President Wilson, he said, "Do not be afraid. The United States will never make another treaty with Russia so long as the present conditions last." Fortunately, those conditions do not now exist. The revolution has come. The Tsar's government has been swept away overnight, and the first act of the new government, God bless it, was to call home Russia exiles and to emancipate the Russian Jews. It's all about the Jews. All that happened in Russia was to kill off the Orthodox Church, kill off the Christians, and make it the homeland of Jews and their communist weapon.
So essentially, the whole story, everything that happened, is about the Jews, right? Them taking over Russia, kicking out the church, the Christian church, getting rid of all the Christians, and taking over the land. Right? So the whole Bolshevik revolution was about that, essentially. And so as we start kind of going through the story, you'll see that unfold. All right. So real quick, the Tsar of Russia, well, hold on real quick. Before we do that, before I start talking about the Tsar, so this, I've heard a lot of these quotes before, but they make, like, they put in perspective the thought process behind wanting to take over, or how to take over countries, right? They put into perspective the thought process behind, how do you gain control of a country? How do you take it over? How do you keep it? How do you manipulate countries? All right. And the view of people who ran countries about those people who are trying to take them over, about the Jews. Because throughout history, people have seen the Jews as, they're trying to infiltrate the country. They're trying to enslave the country. They're trying to put us under their thumb. And so this is a list of quotes from people throughout history and how they saw the Jews and bankers, right? And a couple quotes from bankers about how they saw fucking countries.
If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. Thomas Jefferson. History records that the money changers have used every form of abuse, intrigue, deceit, and violent means possible to maintain their control over governments by controlling money and its issuance. James Madison. You are a den of vipers and thieves. I intend to rout you out, and by the grace of the eternal God will rout you out. Andrew Jackson. The money powers prey upon the nation in times of peace and conspire against it in times of adversity. It is more despotic than monarchy, more insolent than autocracy, more selfish than bureaucracy. I see in the near future a crisis approaching that unnerves me and causes me to tremble for the safety of my country. Corporations have been enthroned, an era of corruption will follow, and the money power of the country will endeavor and prolong its reign by working upon the prejudices of the people, until the wealth is aggregated into a few hands and the republic is destroyed. Abraham Lincoln. The death of Lincoln was a disaster for Christendom. There was no man in the United States great enough to wear his boots, and the bankers went anew to grab the riches. I fear that foreign bankers, with their craftiness and tortuous tricks, will entirely control the exuberant riches of America and use it to systematically corrupt civilization. Otto von Bismarck. I care not what puppet is placed upon the throne of England to rule the empire on which the sun never sets. The man who controls Britain's money supply controls British Empire, and I control the British money supply. Nathan Rothschild. Since I entered politics, I have chiefly had men's views confined to me privately. Some of the biggest men in the United States in the field of commerce and manufacture are afraid of something. They know that there is a power somewhere so organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete, so pervasive, that they better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it. Directly after the signing of the Federal Reserve Act, I have unwittingly ruined my country. All our activities are in the hands of a few men. We have come to be one of the most completely controlled governments in the civilized world. No longer a government by conviction and the vote of a majority, but a government by the opinion and duress of a small group of dominant men. Woodrow Wilson. Money is the god of our time, and Rothschild is his prophet. Heinrich Heine.
So the one quote when dude was talking about, I have talked to like all the biggest men in America, and they all know that there is a force that is aggregated and working against them, right? And it's so powerful that you can't even talk about it above a whisper, right? That's important because they can't even put a name to it because these people changed their name. Like they operate on a super code. Their behavior is codified and they plan and plot to make shit happen, but they never give themselves a name. And they change their personal names, right? They'll form groups and then get rid of the group, like, and move on to another group, and they hide within populations, right? They're always, what's the term? Scheming and plotting to take over countries and to manipulate countries and people, all right? And so it was true then, and it's true now, and that's what we're talking about. That's what we're kind of we gotta we're tuning our glasses so we can see how these people are moving. That's what's important about this. Okay. So we're going to talk about, well, real quick, I'm going to give you guys an introduction to um, the Tsar, Nicholas II. What's important about this is that Nicholas II, he took over when he was pretty young. I think he was like in his early 20s, mid 20s or something. His father fell ill at the age of 49. Like he suddenly fell ill. right? They don't say how he fell ill. They say, oh, he suddenly fell ill and died at the age of 49. That's young as fuck, right? Um, when I first saw it, the first thing I thought was somebody poisoned this nigga. All right, so his name was it was Tsar Alexander II. So he was known as the peacemaker. So under him, Russia didn't get into any wars. They weren't fighting wars. They were chilling. And so it's hard to take over a country when they're not at war with anybody. When everything's chill, it's really hard to cause some chaos, because if there's no external wars and the king and the people in charge have nothing to do but focus on what's going on internally, you'll be found out. And so Tsar Alexander II, known as the peacemaker, he suddenly fell ill and died. That shit came off as real strange to me. And his oldest son, who was a relatively young man, he came to power. So the Tsar died in 1894 is when Alexander died. And so Nicholas took over in 1894. All right. And so the events that we're talking about now happened around 1917. So this is about 20 years later. Okay. So this is about Nicholas, who was related to King George of England. All right. Matter of fact, I'm gonna let me see if I can get you guys a link so y'all can see what he looked like, what they look like. Hold on.
A little known fact was the relationship certain leaders of European nations had with one another. Nicholas II, the Tsar of Russia, his wife Alexandria, Kaiser of Wilhelm of Germany, were all actually first cousins of King George V of the United Kingdom. Additionally, King George was a first cousin, through King Christian IX, of both Tsar Nicholas II of Russia and King Constantine I of Greece. George and Nicholas, however, are said to have been in particularly close, both of which kept a good relationship with one another. They are seen in many photos together dressed very similarly, perhaps showing off the fact that they could be mistook as twins. In one photo, the two monarchs are seen posing with their sons and respective royal heirs, Tsarevich Alexei and Prince Edward. What seemed to have been a family squabble, whether scripted or real, eventually led to World War I breaking out in 1914. The closeness that George and Nicholas had shared didn't seem to be enough to prevent this.
So check out the link I put in the chat. Look at them two dudes. They definitely look like they look really fucking similar. So this is one of them. If y'all watch Michelle Gibson, she'll claim that these are the same people.
Hold on, Linnell, because do you remember when we was doing all that research, looking at them pictures?
Yeah, that's Michelle Gibson. So she's the one who claims that, yo, this is the same person. So
Yeah,
she's
that
saying
They
that,
don't
yo,
look that
all
much
the ones
alike.
we did. Y'all remember we was looking up? I think there was people came off of ships or some shit, and there was them pictures was the same people. It was old. You remember Linnell? You
yeah,
remember
no,
that?
again, I know what you're talking about. It's Michelle Gibson. Like I said, Michelle Gibson would claim that these are the same people,
I
right?
don't know if
Yeah,
it
and I
was
don't know
Michelle
why she would claim
Gibson.
that because they don't look alike, well, like that for real.
It wasn't Michelle Gibson. It was some old king. We was looking at old king
Right, and she was
history.
saying that yes,
Them type people.
Michelle Gibson is the person that put together the what you call it. That's what you're talking about. She put together the
No,
video talking about no.
no. We looked it up.
So you talking about when we was
All of
reading the
us.
no. You talking when we was reading about the black
Yeah.
nobility in Europe. Yeah, that was different. So that's when we
Yeah, they was supposed to whoever they was supposed to be on the ship, and then it showed it say they stout blah blah blah, and then they showed a picture. I mean, they had a painting
No,
or
we were talking about the black nobility in Europe. When the dude went there, he recorded what they looked like, right? And then when you look them up on Google, it's something completely different. I know exactly what you're talking
yeah
about.
yeah
Yeah,
yeah
so, yeah, that's not this. That's a little something different. This is Michelle Gibson when she was going through history, talking about the people that were the same. She was like, "Yo," so it's actually three of them that she says are the same person. The three that he talked about, the king of, hold on, where is it? So it's King Wilhelm. That's who it is. King Wilhelm II, Nicholas II, and King George V. So she says all these three people are the same person. Hold on. Oh no. Did I lose the picture? Oh, here it goes. So, yeah, this is the picture of the three of them: Wilhelm, Nicholas, and George. So they're all related, right? They're all monarchs. Okay, so you can check that out. All right. So, now you know King George and Nicholas are they ended up on wrong. So it was Wilhelm, I think. They ended up on opposite sides of the war. All right, I think it's Wilhelm and Nicholas ended up on opposite sides of the war. This is World War One, started in 1914. So the Bolshevik Revolution starts in 1917. So um, Russia had been at war for a couple of years. Okay, when the revolution started. All right. Um, so just like with America, remember America got its central bank in 1913. And so these people were trying to put central banks in all these countries. And in Russia, they weren't having it. The czars weren't having it in Russia. England had a central bank, but there wasn't one in Russia. Russia had a lot of resources. They got a lot of money, like Mark was talking about. They had a lot of money, a lot of resources, gold, all of that shit, and they controlled a lot of territory. Okay, and so the international bankers, aka the Talmudic Jews, all right, or the here. Let me. Where was my? There it goes.
The satanic Jews.
They wanted in, right? They wanted a way into Russia. Okay, and so just like we talk about um, Baron de Rothschild, J.P. Morgan, right? We talk about all these international kind of bankers. There was a gentleman, what's his name? Schiff, right? So it was him who started into Russia. He was the one that was financing the Russian takedown.
With kings, parliaments, and monarchies, no man better epitomized this new breed of man that sought to destroy the traditional power structures than Jacob Schiff. In 1904, Schiff invited a number of Jewish communal leaders to a meeting in his home. Within 72 hours, war will break out between Japan and Russia, he informed them. His words proved accurate, and under the guise of protecting Jews in Russia, they starved the Tsar of needed capital by loaning heavily to Japan. Russia suffered a devastating defeat, serving to inflame anti-Jewish sentiments in the royal court, and leading the Russian Minister of Finance to declare our government will never forgive or forget what the Jew financier Schiff did to us. He was one of the most dangerous men we had against us abroad. Adding insult to injury, Schiff also helped organize the distribution of revolutionary literature to Russian POWs held in Japan, planting the first seeds of an effective propaganda campaign that would serve to change the course of world history. The animosity became so intense, the Tsar penned the following in 1905. Quote, I do not believe that everything that is now going on in Russia is due to the Russian people. The labor strikes are organized by the Polish and Jewish engineers. The world accuses us of making pogroms, but I believe that the pogroms are a natural appearance. The Jews wish to dominate over Russia and over the Russian Tsar. We merely defend ourselves. End quote.
All right, so that's the Tsar saying, "Hey, yo, there's something going on here, right? And it doesn't seem natural, right? There's some the revolution or the seeds of deceit, right? The people unhappy, like all the shit that's going on. This ain't natural. Get me?" And he was seeing it, and he was like, "Yo, this is from outsiders. There are people outside, like people coming from outside into the country, stirring this shit up." So he saw it. So Jacob Schiff, the billionaire, he was financing it, and Nicholas II, he saw it. He probably didn't know exactly who was doing it, but he saw it. Okay. Hey, Mark, you was talking about the programs. You want to talk about them right quick?
I mean, it was basically, from what I understand, like a bunch of different periods in time where they, and it's kind of interesting how you said it. Like they said, or he said, we were merely defending ourselves. So the way they teach, and this is what I was talking about in the room when we were talking about it the other day. Like they teach us something different. So over here, they taught us the pogroms were like when the government of Russia or like the czars went into like Jewish neighborhoods and started rounding up the Jews and like beating them up and killing them, like how Hitler did with the Glass Knight or whatever. And yeah, it was just a bunch. It was a bunch of different happenings of that, I guess you could say, and they just put them in groups called pogroms.
Right. And so that's why you heard Nicholas, right? Like, hey, they're saying that we're doing it and we're not doing it. Like, that's not us doing the program, the pogroms.
I never heard that before, you know, like that. The word like it put that way.
Yeah, the pogroms. Yeah. So he says, we're not doing it. It's not us. And so somebody else from outside of here is trying to agitate inside the country. All right. And so it finally, so we see Schiff is like, all right, yo, I want in. And so he's starting to finance people to come in. Right. And so the Tsar, Nicholas, he's like, remember, he's in the middle of a war. World War I is going on at this time. Russia is fighting World War I. And in the middle of it, he's like, you know what? I don't like what's going on. And what does he do? He kicks the Jews out of any place where they can be fucking dangerous.
From the very beginning of the war, orders were given locally for the expulsion of the Jews from army areas of Russia, specifically those who were on the front of war. One of the reasons behind this was due to them being known for conscription dodging, tax evading, and the crime of espionage. As testified by Dr. Pasamanik, a medic on the front during the war, quote, suddenly throughout the area of the front and in all circles close to power spread the rumour that the Jews were doing espionage, unquote. These accusations may not have come about without the help of German General Staff, which issued a proclamation calling on the Jews of Russia to rise up against their government. But opinion, supported by many sources, prevails that in this case it was Polish influence at work. In addition to accusations against the Jews living in these areas, the Jews were accused of cowardice and desertion. According to Alexander Solzhenitsyn in his book 200 Years Together, quote, "Of course, the Jews in the front could not break their ties with their neighbouring villages, interrupt the Jewish post, and turn into the enemies of their co-religionists. Moreover, in the eyes of the Jews in the Pale of the Settlement, the Germans appeared as a European nation of high culture, much different from the Russians. At that time, Times correspondent Stephen Graham reported, as soon as the smoke of a German ship appeared at the horizon, the Jewish population of Libava forgot the Russian language and began to speak German. If they had to leave, the Jews preferred to go to the German side. The hostility displayed by the Russian army and then their deportation could only provoke their bitterness and cause some of them to collaborate openly with the Germans," unquote.
So Nicholas was like, hold on, man. Yo, get them away. They got to go. They at the very least got to get away from the front because they're likely to fucking turn. They engage in espionage, meaning they snitching. They not paying fucking taxes. And then when it's time to go fight, yo, you live in the country, it's time to go fight. And you motherfuckers is like, nah, we out. So this is what happened. And he like, yo, these motherfuckers, they likely to join up with the fucking enemies as they come to the shores. Because they speak the same language as them. He was like, yo, they'll be speaking Russian. The Germans that come all of a sudden, they forget that they Russian. They start speaking German. Like they can't be trusted. So he didn't say kill them. He just said, yo, get them away from the front. Places where we gonna need, like the important places, we can't have them there. Now, I don't know if that was smart or not. I'd have put their ass in the army and put them on the front line, but see, run in. But he was attempting to just get them out the mix because he didn't trust them. Right? Yo, is everybody following so far? I know we moving kind of quick, but how we doing? We all right? We good? Ain't nobody said nothing.
I said, yeah.
No? You know you're on stage,
We
right?
good.
You're on stage. You can
Yeah, I'm
just
good.
say, oh, okay. All right, good stuff. All right, so you just got here. We're talking
I
about
was across the room, but we good. If I got it, you know they got it. Look.
All right, if you just got here, we're talking about the Bolshevik Revolution. So it happened in Russia. Okay, so it was a revolution that was financed by the bankers and carried out by a section or faction of Jews inside Russia. So that's a real quick catch up. Okay. So where were we? That was when the Tsar. So the person in charge of Russia at this time was Nicholas II. He was fighting World War I against Germany and Japan, and there's a couple other people. Okay. So they're in the middle of fighting World War I, and Jacob Schiff, a banker, is starting to try to create a revolution inside the country. And that's what we're talking about now. Okay. One of the things that happened then that's happening now is the use of the press. Okay. The average person, the only way that they engage with politics is through the media. And so it's a really powerful tool. That's why whenever like Hitler complained as well, he's like, yo, they come in the country and they take over the fucking media. And he was talking about the Jews. He's like, yo, they come in the country and they take over the media. Why? Because that's how you control what people think. And so the same thing happened during this time in Russia.
During the height of the famine, a British traveler named Gareth Jones, who was to die soon after under mysterious circumstances at the age of 30, braved the travel ban and spent 3 weeks touring the devastation. After speaking honestly about his findings in lectures in Berlin and London, the new Bolshevik head of the Soviet press.
Hold on, wait. That's not the one. It's a different one I want. Hold on. Oh, it's this one. My bad. The wrong one. Oh yes, this one.
The Russian people were bombarded with negative press portraying the Tsarina as a German spy and the Tsar as cold, monstrous, and uncaring, while touting visions of a great workers' paradise should he be deposed. Tensions mounted, culminating in the Bloody Sunday Massacre, a workers' march that went horribly wrong as troops opened fire on the crowd as the Tsar was away visiting his troops. This incident was used to brilliant effect by the press, who insinuated that not only did the Tsar order the violence, but that his reaction to the bloodshed was equally callous and cruel. Excerpts from his diary and witness accounts show just how dishonestly the controlled press handled the entire affair with the aim of galvanizing the public into revolutionary fervor.
So there was an event that happened while he was away. So he was again, they're at war, so he's off visiting the troops at war. There was an event that happened, right? And it was something like, it wasn't intentional, but the press, because it's controlled by it's controlled at this point by a certain group of people. They weaponize the press to paint certain events the way they want them to be seen by the public. That's the power of the media. So it was true then and it's true today. Right? We're dealing with that shit right now. Like every time I talk to somebody about what's going on today, all they can do is tell me what they see in the media. And they're literally repeating word for word what the person on television told them. And generally, people look at the media that resonates with how they feel anyway. Got me? And so you get, what's the term, echo chamber, right? You don't get a complete story. You don't look at both sides of the issue. You don't try to do some critical thinking about, yo, well, why are they covering this side of the story? Well, what else happened? How did it get that way? Am I sure they're telling me the truth? Right? And so the same thing happened or happens in every place that we look at. Yo, that shit even happens like in about history. Like, we only know what they tell us about history. And if there aren't people piecing things together from information, then we'll only know what they tell us. Just like if we talk about the Holocaust, right? All we know is what we learned in school. We don't look at other people's narratives. We don't get the situation from the other perspective. What you say, Meaty? Hasn't that always been the case? Well, we only know what they tell us. Sure, but some people actually try to go to the other side and get the story. What's your story? All right. So even though the winner writes the history books, the loser also has a book, and they also have tales to tell. And you get the complete story when you go get the winner side and the loser side. And in a lot of world events, we only get history from one perspective, and it's the perspective of a certain people. because they routinely control the media outlets. I would say media was the only source besides personal accounts that were hard to get back in the day. I'm not. That's true. Definitely hard to get. But you know what? A lot of times there were people in war who came back and said the opposite of what the media was saying, and they would try to get the word out. And so the thing is, um, even if you didn't believe everything they said, at least it would spark you to think, all right, well, maybe they aren't telling me everything. You know what I mean, so even if you don't believe everything, the least you can do is question. All right, does this entity have a what's their slant? Are they vested in giving me a certain view of the situation? And so, um, at least today, so we have the benefit of hindsight, and a thinking person can see that the media we get is slanted, if not outright fucking libelous and lying. And so it's inherent upon us that we have to fucking be critical thinkers. We got to look at whatever they're saying, and we can hear it, but we definitely got to be critical about believing everything that happens or what they say. And so, um, during this time, um, like y'all said, there's a limited media, and that media is being used to manipulate the public. So Jacob Schiff has paid emissaries to use the media to manipulate the public. Okay. And so it's around this time that we get introduced to um, Vladimir Lenin. So whenever I used to hear the name Lenin, I always thought of John Lennon. You're talking about dude from the Beatles? No. Oh, there was another Lenin. Okay, we're talking about there was a gentleman in Russia. His name was Lenin.
He
Vladimir
looked
Lenin.
he looked like Satan.
He definitely looked like we say he looked like Satan.
Got the little wiry mustache, bald dude,
Yes.
wrap around.
Yes, he definitely looks like a villain. He definitely looks like a villain. All right. And so, no, not Rasputin. I'm talking about Lenin. And so, let us meet Lenin.
By the start of 1916, one of the men who fled into exile was a guy named Lenin, taking up residence in Switzerland. As always, his mind stayed focused on revolutionary politics. During this period, he wrote and published Imperialism, the highest stage of capitalism, 1916. Despite popular belief, Lenin was actually Jewish. We know this to be true because of newly released documentation by Russia. Lenin, whose real name was Vladimir Lilich Ulyanov, chose the pseudonym Lenin in 1901 following his Siberian exile for attempting to publish an illegal newspaper called The Workers' Cause. Lenin's grandfather and mother were Ashkenazi Jews. Under pressure by the communist government, Lenin's Jewish roots were kept secret until after his death. Lenin was also a crypto-Jew who tried to conceal his Jewishness by converting to Christianity in his early days, as did most of his family. He came from a poor Jewish family and was, according to his baptismal certificate, the son of Moses Blank, a native of Zhytomyr, a province of Ukraine.
All right. So notice in that clip, he's using Jewish as if it's a race. All right. See how he used Jewish as if it's a race? Oh,
Well, but he also put the Ashkenazi before that. To
mm-hmm.
like, I think that's the bloodline or whatever.
That's the
That's
bloodline.
yeah.
Exactly. That's the bloodline. All right. So
Definitely more specific.
it
Yeah.
is. Right. So that's what I mean about they're concerned about the bloodline. Right. They'll say Jew, but has nothing to do with the religion. It's about the bloodline. And they intermingle the two. Who's that coming off? Right. Yeah, so they they synonymize race with religion is not the same. Right. So Lenin was Ashkenazi by blood. Right. And so that's what he hid. And so in order to hide it, he became a Christian. Right. Can't be a Christian and a Jew. So he 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 pretended to be a Christian to hide his bloodline because that's where his loyalty was to. All right. So that's what's important. So that's Lenin. So Lenin was one of the people when you just heard about the Tsar kicking all them people out of uh moving all them people around, all the Jews around. He was one of the people that got moved around. And so he fled, he left the country. He changed his name. Why did he run? Because he got kicked out for running an illegal newspaper. Remember, we just talked about the press. And so he was there trying to becoming part of the information distributing populace because that's important. He ran there and he immediately was like, "Yo, we need to distribute this information. He who creates the news controls the news." You know what I mean? And so this is so it wasn't just Lenin, it was Lenin and Trotsky. They were both um involved in developing the revolution. Okay, so it's Leon Trotsky and Vladimir Lenin.
The damage had been done. Even worse for the Tsar, unbeknownst to him at the time, Jacob Schiff had provided the incredible sum of about $20 million, that is nearly $1 billion in today's money, to two then unknown men, Leon Trotsky and Vladimir Lenin. Both set off for the capital and surrounding territory with the aim of securing a following, with the expressed purpose of fomenting revolution. Reports began to flow in of agents swarming Petrograd handing out money to troops and officials. According to the U.S. State Department, large denomination ruble notes were passed directly to the men in the Pavlovsky Regiment just a few hours before it mutinied against its officers and sided with the revolution. The situation was swiftly going from bad to worse to completely out of control. With the First World War now raging, Russia was crippled both at home and abroad, losing battles in Europe and losing hearts and minds on the streets of the homeland. As the Tsar was returning home from visiting the troops on the front lines, revolutionary troops blocked his way. Confronted with the full gravity of the situation, on the 15th of March 1917, the Tsar stepped out of his train car for the last time and abdicated the throne.
All right, so while the Tsar was away visiting the troops, Lenin and Trotsky were given $20 million in today's money, right? Just to give you guys some context. And they were paying people to become part of the revolution. They were saying,
That
hey,
sounds familiar.
yo, think about what's going on right now with all the protesters, all the people who are incentivized to come and protest, right? It's going on right now. Think George Soros, right? Think George Soros, think who else be paying people to come through? Who's the other billionaires? Um
Pritzker, is it, was it Pritzker or something?
JB, right? Think Klaus Schwab. right? So they're buying a revolt. And so while Nicholas II, while the Tsar is away, the first thing that happened was there was an incident caused by Lenin and Trotsky, and they're going not only just regular people, but they're going to the military and giving them money and selling them dreams about what could be if we got rid of the Tsar. He's got us into a war. He's got all this money. The press is spreading rumors about how he don't care about the people, how he's the one um, that's organizing the pogroms, how his wife is spending money all over the place, how she's callous, she doesn't care about the people. So they're spreading all of this, all right? They're spreading
Why that
all of this
why that shit sound like Ukraine?
because it's their playbook.
And that's where they come from, ain't it?
They do. This is Ukraine is right there.
Yeah, this is happening in modern day. This would be happening in modern day like areas of Ukraine. Like it's not just stipulated to like the modern day we think of Russia. Like Russia was still those satellite countries back then.
Facts.
This is happening in modern day Ukraine.
No, I'm saying modern day Ukraine would have been just Russia, and this shit would have been happening in modern day. You get what I'm saying? Like if modern day Ukraine, the pogroms were happening in today's time, modern Ukraine would be the same area. You know? Yeah.
Right, because it was part of Russia, right? Is that what you're
Yeah.
saying, Mark? Yeah.
Yeah. So um yo, it's their playbook. They've been doing this shit for a long time. They've done it in several different countries. This is their playbook. This is how they get. I mean, they did the same thing in Libya, right? They go and buy a revolution, and
And we
so
pay for it.
basically, basically, they buy revolution. Okay, that's what they do. And by the time, so the Tsar's off visiting the troops. By the time he got back home, it was over with for him. The revolt had become so big, he couldn't do nothing but be like, you know what, y'all got it. All right. So all this time we've been talking, we ain't really talked about like what a Bolshevik is. Like the term, what does it mean? Where does it come from? Right. So this is a kind of an explanation of what a Bolshevik is.
You must understand, the leading Bolsheviks who took over Russia were not Russians. They hated Russians. They hated Christians. Driven by ethnic hatred, they tortured and slaughtered millions of Russians without a shred of human remorse. It cannot be overstated. Bolshevism committed the greatest human slaughter of all time. The fact that most of the world is ignorant and uncaring about this enormous crime is proof that the global media is in the hands of the perpetrators.
Wow.
So the Bolsheviks were not Russians. They were people that came from outside of Russia that hated Russians, hated Christians, that wanted to take over.
But the way they teach us is that Bolsheviks were Russians, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Because they want to teach you it's a revolution. That they convinced the people inside the country to follow them, but the people who came up with the idea were not Russians. This was an external activity, an external cause. All right. That's where the Bolshevik concept came from. Okay. And so now we get into a full-fledged revolt. And let's see who comes to power.
In the year 1917, one of the starting points of the Bolshevik Revolution, primarily piloted by Jews who hated Russia, came out of the closet during what is known as the February Revolution. On the 22nd of February, the workers at the Putilov plant in Petrograd went on strike. By the following day, a series of demonstrations were held, demanding the end of the Russian autocracy and the end of the Russian participation in World War I. There were no newspapers during the first week of the revolutionary events in Petrograd promoting the strikes. However, due to foreign banking interests, alongside the revolutionary Jew who looked to take advantage of the situation, they began trumpeting, not looking for the ways to rebuild the state, but by vying with each other in denouncing all things of the past. Through the control of the media, revolution was actually promoted. In an unprecedented gesture, the newspaper of the Constitutional Democrats, known as Cadets, Rek, announced that from now on, quote, all Russian life must be rebuilt from its roots, unquote. Strikes continue to expand, with more than 200,000 workers now involved, leading to occasional violent clashes between protesters and police. In an attempt to squash this anarchy, on the 25th of February, a battalion of soldiers was sent to Petrograd to end the uprising. On top of this, Nicholas ordered the dissolution of the Fourth Duma. The Duma ignored his order and decreed the establishment of a provisional government with Gregory Lvov as Prime Minister. On the 27th of February, the soldiers sent to suppress the protesters defected and joined the Bolsheviks. Two garrisons of soldiers in Petrograd shoot their officers rather than obeying orders to fire on civilians. The returning soldiers had mostly joined the Bolsheviks on the word of protesters who had informed them about the current state of affairs. Menshevik leaders were freed from Peter and Paul Fortress and founded the Petrograd Soviet. The protest turned to anarchy and chaos, which resulted in the Tsar losing control of the capital. Upon hearing words of this, on the 28th of February, the Tsar attempts to return to Petrograd, but is delayed by railway problems in Pskov. The Duma and the Petrograd Soviet both meet during this time to plan a new course of action for the country. The Duma and the Petrograd Soviet both meet to plan a course of action for the country during this time. And by March the 1st, the leaders of France, Britain formally recognized the provisional government as the official government of Russia. Alexander Solzhenitsyn explains in his book 200 Years Together the first course of action proposed by the provisional government. Quote, the equality of the Jews advanced very quickly. The 1st of March, old calendar style, one day before the abdication, a few hours before the infamous Order No. 1, which pushed the army into collapse. V. Makalov and M. Adzimov, two commissaries of the Duma committee delegated to the Ministry of Justice, had issued an internal Ministry of Justice directive ordering to enlist all Jewish assistants to attorneys at law into the Guild of Judicial Attorneys. By the 2nd of March 1917, it became obvious to Nicholas II that his control over Russia was very fastly diminishing. As a result of this coup attempt, under duress, Nicholas abdicated his throne and leadership. Already by March the 3rd, the chairman of the State Duma, M. Rodzianko, and the Prime Minister of the Provisional Government signed a declaration which stated that one of the main goals of the new government is a repeal of all restrictions based upon religion, nationality, and social class. Then on the 4th of March, the Defense Minister Gukshov proposed to open a path for the Jews to become military officers, and the Minister of Education, Manulov, proposed to repeal the percentage quotas on the Jews. Both proposals were accepted without obstacles. Prior to this, no Jew was allowed to be an officer in the military.
All right. So, did you catch it? So he was gone. They instigated. Well, first they started paying off people to be instigators. They paid off the military, right? And then they started a kind of an event, right? And the soldiers that were coming back from the war, all they heard was the people on the street, their side of the argument. All they heard was, "Oh, we're taking over. The czar's on some bullshit. He's killing people, and he don't care, and also other shit." And they were like, "Oh yeah, we just got back from war. Yeah, this some bullshit, right?" And so the Duma, I guess that's their version of like a garrison, right? That's a military troop, right? Came out to try to stop the people from taking over, right? To try to be like, all right, hey, let's get some order back. And when the officer of the Duma was like, hey, yo, take these people down right here, instead of shooting on the crowd or the agitators, the soldiers shot their own fucking officers because they had been paid off. So remember, Lenin and Trotsky had already started spreading money around to the soldiers. And so Lenin and Trotsky became the de facto head of kind of the lower class people, the Duma. And so that being the case, you had the politicians in the city who they were like, all right, well, we're a new government, right? We have a provisional government, right? So they're like, all right, fuck it, we're done with him. This is all before the Tsar got back. He's on the train coming back to the fucking country, and they already got a new government that was split into two: the provisional government of the aristocrats, and then the lower class with like the military and all of that shit. So they got like a split thing happening where they're kind of agreeing on shit. Okay. And so before they got back, other fucking nations were recognizing the new government before Nicholas got back. That tells you about the coordination. Other governments were recognizing the new government, and Nicholas hadn't even abdicated yet. They were already like, this was already coordinated from external factors. And what were the first things they did with the new provisional government? They took back the restrictions on religion, nationality, and social class, and who can hold office and be officers.
Sounds so familiar.
Right? So that means you can be a Jew. You don't have to be from the country, and you don't have to be an aristocrat in order to be in charge. That's all the things that prohibited them from taking over and holding official titles: nationality, religion, social class. And just like that, all the people that have been kept out because they were fucking sneaky and untrustworthy became leaders in the country, part of the government. People that weren't allowed to be part of the government before, all of a sudden they became part of the government, in charge. All right. Any questions so far? Let's see where we was at. Those that no questions. We're good. Everybody on the same page.
In the year 19...
No, my bad. Everybody on the same page. All right, good stuff. Told you this is one of them old school cooks, man. We used to do these back when we first started the podcast.
Right. That's what it feel like. Yeah.
I mean, this Conspiracy University right here, y'all. Hey, yo, if you just got here, man, yeah, welcome to Conspiracy University. You got a pink ticket. We're here every Wednesday. Wednesday, Conspiracy University. Fridays is Conspiracy Cookout with the Tinfoil family. All right. So it's PhD level conspiracy talk. All right. So this is my kind of stuff. I like to dig into a subject and kind of flesh it out, see what's cracking. All right. So if you had never heard of the Bolshevik Revolution, that's what we're talking about. All right. It's an event that shaped the world we live in today, but nobody really knows about it because it's hard to hide the truth of it, and so they don't talk about it. And it's another reason they don't talk about it. We're gonna get into that in a whole second because it's some bullshit. All right, because it's some fucking bullshit. All right. So essentially, where we at right now is Jacob Schiff, an international banker on the level of like J.P. Morgan, and the Rothschilds, right? The Rockefellers, like he's on that level. So he gave a lot of money to Vladimir Lenin and Leon Trotsky to buy a revolution inside Russia. Russia did not have a central bank. So this is around the time that all the countries were getting central banks. So America got its central bank in 1913, thanks to fucked up ass Dwight, not Eisenhower. Who was that fucker? 1913. Mark, who was that?
Wilson, was it Wilson? No.
Woodrow? No, was it Woodrow
No.
Wilson?
Let me check.
Yeah, I think it was Woodrow Wilson.
Because he did the same thing. I think it was because he 2 years later or 3 years later he went to Haiti and got all the gold reserves to, of course,
Yeah, I
Who?
think it
Woodrow
was
build
Wilson?
Woodrow
there.
Wilson. Yeah.
Yeah, Woodrow.
Yeah,
I
Woodrow
think
it
it was
Wilson.
after President Andrew Jackson.
had to be.
So Andrew Jackson was in the 1800s. Yo, he fought off the banks. Woodrow Wilson is the one who signed the Federal Reserve Act, right?
Okay.
So this around the time that the central bankers were trying to make sure all the nations, especially the major ones, had central banks. The Russia didn't have a central bank, and they weren't controlled by the Jewish bankers, or what we would call the Zionists. They weren't controlled by them. The globalist, okay, and they were controlled by the royal family, the Romanovs, who had money. All right, and to this point, they had a very strong leader who died, and his son took over, and now his son is in the middle of a revolution, and he's losing his throne. Well, he lost his throne. Okay, and so now the globalists have taken over and seized power. That's where we are. Okay. Everybody got questions about that while we move on? Let's see. All right, let's pop into it.
Lenin and the Bolsheviks were a faction of the Marxist Russian Social Democratic Labour Party, who eventually became the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, who advocated at the time for land redistribution and the end to the war, all of which was being financed by Western banking elites, who sought to use the promise of prosperity for the common man as a tool to win over the hearts of Russian peasants, workers and soldiers. The ideology of Marxism didn't arrive organically or in a vacuum. It came about from a man named Karl Marx, whose real name was Chaim Herschel Mordecai. Karl was a Prussian-born theorist who was the son of a rabbi. The ideology of Karl was used to push Europe to the brink of destruction under the guise of anti-capitalism. Ironically, however, his efforts were financed by Jewish bankers and Western powers. The ideology of Marxism still has its hold on Western countries even today.
Okay. So let's understand something. Marxists, communists, socialists, globalists, it's all the same shit. They all mean the same thing. They play a lot of word games, but all of these things mean the same shit.
What would you define that as?
Say it again.
What would you define that as?
Slavery.
Okay.
Yo,
Period, point blank.
it's all slavery. It's different. It's a form of slavery that they use different fucking words to describe so that it doesn't seem like slavery. All right. So remember, all the things belong to the state. All right. All the powers in the hands of the state. Everybody works for the state. So they use different words and phrases to make it seem like it's different shit, but it's all the same thing. All right. So you got to understand that part. And so when we talk about globalism, that's what these people are trying to achieve. So we talk about globalism today. You hear people talk about globalists today. These people are trying to achieve globalism. That's getting rid of the individual state of Russia and making them part of the community where people just kind of come and go as they please, right? Where the international bankers put a bank up in there, they enslave the people through debt and usury. Oh yeah, fascism too. Thank you, Mal. Thank you, Mel. Fascism, same thing.
So is there
All the same thing.
anything that
Hmm?
is synonymous with nationalist?
No.
So it's kind of nationalism and everything else?
Um. Mm,
It's characterized by a strong sense of nationalism, but I think they're separate.
yeah, they're separate. So now, yeah, nationalism is its own thing, right? Yeah, nationalism is its own thing. Mm, great question though. So that's what they're trying to bring about. So they'll use the terms Marxism or communism or socialism, all of this dumb shit, but it's all the same shit. And so it's one of the things that's a point I wanted to drive home. Make sure we were all on the same page. All right. Else?
It's control. That's what it is. Control. You know,
Yeah,
they all control.
that's facts. I'm with you. Um. All right. So speaking of control, now we get into the
I
place
think that
where,
was a thing you was about to play. I
huh?
didn't know that was somebody's real voice. I thought that was
Oh
a
yeah,
video you was about to play.
That's my man Dean. My man Dean is in Illinois. What's going on, Dean? How you feel, brother? Um,
Doing good.
what's up, O? How you feel, bro? You late?
I know, bro. What's good, man?
Ain't nothing, man.
I
We
had to
just
I had to come back from space like the lady, so you know.
Yo,
Mhm.
did you get your hair colored on the way back too, bro?
Yeah, and yeah, I just happened to turn out to look like the Wicked Witch of the East or the West.
All right, that's what's up, cuz. All right, y'all. Yo, if you just got here like my man O, we're talking about the Bolshevik Revolution. All right, so we're talking about what happened to Russia and how it became what it is now. because it's actually it's a really interesting story because of who did what. When we ain't even got into the thick of it yet. We ain't even got to the bullshit yet. So I done told y'all about some bullshit, but we ain't even got to the bullshit yet. All right. So right now we're just talking about how they overthrew the Tsar. Okay, how they changed governments and they made the Tsar abdicate, which means pretty much give up, step down. He abdicated the throne, and so they built a government. So they no longer had a monarch; they had a government. Okay. And so now we go to who took control, right? Who really took control?
Between the Bolsheviks and the Provisional Government of Russia looking to seize more power at the time, disagreements seemed to be unavoidable. In what is now known as July Days, a spontaneous pro-Soviet demonstration occurred on the streets of Petrograd. This resulted with the Provisional Government using its force to put the rebellion down, and on the 6th of July they also ordered the arrest of certain Bolshevik leaders, including Leon Trotsky. The Provisional Government at this time didn't see eye to eye with Trotsky and wanted him imprisoned until such time that they could cool the storm that was brewing. The foreign banking interests in New York and London had put Trotsky in place as an agent to be the leader of the Bolshevik Revolution. Trotsky, whose real name was Lev Davidovich Bronstein, was a Jew who had previously been living in New York, being monitored, mentored, and financed by Wall Street bankers. During the month of July 1917, Alexander Kerensky succeeded Lvov as Prime Minister of Russia. And in the month of August, what is now known as the Kornilov Affair took place, in which General Lavir Kornilov ordered an army corps to Petrograd to destroy the Soviets. Kornilov was the Russian commander-in-chief who believed Russia's war effort was being undermined. He believed the chaos in Russia was being deliberately escalated by people like Lenin, who he believed was a Jewish spy working for the Germans. With the Russian military inbound to destroy the Soviets, the Provisional Government armed tens of thousands of Red Guard Bolsheviks to defend Petrograd from the attempted military coup. Thousands of people died during this time. However, the Bolsheviks did manage to succeed, and on the 31st of August, Kornilov was arrested. By the 4th of September, the Provisional Government, now under pressure from the Bolsheviks and their Jewish Wall Street financiers, released the Bolshevik leaders from prison, including Leon Trotsky. With the majority of the Bolsheviks now being unmatched in their power in Petrograd, Lenin, who was in hiding in Finland under the direction of Jewish bankers in Germany, decided to return to Petrograd and lead the reign of the Bolsheviks. Lenin, now in power, had no need for the Provisional Government or their direction, who then called for a coup in what would now be known as the October Revolution. On the 25th of October, soldiers directed by the Military Revolutionary Committee of the Petrograd Soviet captured the Winter Palace, ending the power of the Russian Provisional Government. The Bolsheviks finally take over and are now fully in charge, with all of their leadership comprising of Jewish revolutionaries who are under the direction of bankers and intelligence circles in the West.
All right, so let's recap what happened. So you had two factions after Nicholas stepped down. Okay, so at this point, they get the Bolsheviks have captured Nicholas. They have him and his family. So the Tsar has a wife and 5 kids. They captured Nicholas and his family, and they had 11 servants with him. No, it was 11 total. So it's 6 servants with him. And so they have them locked away. All right. So there were two factions. You had the aristocrats, right, who were like, all right, well, Um, there is a revolution. People are unhappy. Let's form a new government. They weren't financed and backed by the bankers. Then you have the Duma, the people at the lower class. This is where you get all the Jews at, right? These are the people that flooded in the country, who are in the lower class, who used to get kicked out, all of that shit. They flooded back in the country. Um, because they were spreading money around, they had the military on their side. Well, a large faction of the military, not all of it, because the other half of the provisional government, the the elites, they had military as well. But the the Bolsheviks, they were spreading money around, and so the provisional government, the upper class folks, right? They didn't trust Lenin, not Lenin. I'm sorry, Trotsky. They were like, hold on, he's on some bullshit, and so they caught him and locked him up because they saw what he was trying to do. They're like, oh hell no, this dude is on some other shit. He's not like, for better or for worse, even though they made the czar step down because the people didn't like the direction of the country, they were still Russians. The aristocrats were still Russians, and they still wanted what was best for Russia, and they wanted to maintain some sense of ordinary life, right? The Bolsheviks wanted a complete change, right? They were trying to upend what Russia was going to be. That's why they got Trotsky and locked him up. And so when they locked him up, the Bolsheviks went to war with the aristocrats, right? And so there was a clash. The Bolsheviks won. Well, first, no, first things first. Yeah, no, there was a clash. The Bolsheviks won, and they made them release Trotsky. Okay, Trotsky gets out, and then they they completely go and wipe out the other half of the government, the aristocrats. So they took Trotsky prisoner. They had to let him out because they got into a skirmish. They were made to let him out, and the Bolsheviks were backed by the bankers. What does that mean? That's important because if you're a government, you need money to function. You need to be able to do business to function. And if the international bankers are telling you, "Hey, yo, we like them," because remember, Trotsky and Lenin were put there by the bankers. It's their idea. They financed them. So pretty much they had their guy in jail and they made him let him go. Yo, that's my guy. So they let him go. And as soon as they let him go, what does Trotsky do? He goes to war with the aristocrats. And they win. And so now the Bolsheviks have the entire government. Right? So it's not a split government anymore where you have, these guys and these guys. No. Just one government, the Bolsheviks won. And now that they've won, guess who comes to be the leader? Lenin, who had to run throughout all of this skirmishes and shit. He had to fucking flee. I think he went to what they say he went to, like fucking not Switzerland, one of them fucking countries. But he ran, and so once they finally win, and they've killed off everybody and took total control of the country, he comes back to be the fucking leader. So now it's over with. They got the Tsar and his family tucked away. They done killed off the other half of the provisional government. and now they got the entire country. And so life should be good. Because remember, they came to power preaching that, oh, there should be equality for everybody and prosperity for everybody. Oh, it's going to be great. Okay? This is what they were preaching. And so now the Bolsheviks have the entire country. So what is it that they're going to do?
With the hierarchy and governing structure of Russia utterly destroyed, Schiff and his associates had accomplished their aims, but they hadn't bothered to create a plan to build something new out of the rubble. Opportunists and swindlers swept in to fill the void, creating a deeply corrupt and chaotic environment, and ultimately a kakistocracy of the most dangerous sort. Despondent at the new direction of his nation, the Tsar's brother-in-law, the Grand Duke Alexander, stated, quote, "For the first time in history, a revolution is being engineered not from below, but from above, not by people against their governments, but by governments against the welfare of the people." End quote. Heads of state in America and Europe struggled with the question of whether or not to formally recognize the new government in Russia. Surviving documents indicate feelings of unease, and many saw it as a coup orchestrated primarily by a non-Russian element against Russian interests. Quote, "The whole record of Bolshevism in Russia is indelibly impressed with the stamp of alien invasion. The murder of the Tsar, deliberately planned by the Jew Sverdlov and carried out by the Jews Koloshekin, Siromolotov, Safarov, Voykov, and Yurovsk, is in fact not of the Russian people, but of this hostile invader." End quote. Robert Wilton, former Times correspondent in St. Petersburg, in The Last Days of the Romanovs. With the notable exception of Lenin, the majority of leading figures are Jews. Moreover, the principal inspiration and the driving power comes from Jewish leaders. Winston Churchill. There is much in the fact of Bolshevism itself, in the fact that so many Jews are Bolshevists, in the fact that the ideals of Bolshevism at many points are consonant with the finest ideals of Judaism. The Jewish Chronicle. It seems only the public figureheads of Bolshevism are occasionally non-Jewish. Russians argue that because the funding for the revolution came from Jewish sources, the underlying Marxist philosophy derives from Jewish thinkers. The instigators on the ground and leadership of the party and the Cheka, secret police, are almost entirely composed of Jews, and the only state-protected ethnic group is now the Jews, with anti-Semitism an offense punishable by death. While Christians seem to be the targets of all manner of aggression and atrocity, that this battle seems to be one of race or culture, and not at all the class war scenario championed by the press. R. Thomason, diplomat. 50% of Soviet governments in each town consist of Jews of worst type. U.S. Consul Caldwell. Jews predominant in local Soviet government, anti-Jewish feeling growing among population. U.S. Consul Summers. Rumors even circulated in governments around the world that the Romanov massacre had been a case of Jewish ritual murder. These discussions were quieted by leveling accusations of anti-Semitism, until 2015, in which the Russian Orthodox Church opened a new investigation into the matter, an investigation still ongoing.
All right. So they had the Tsar. So at first they imprisoned the Tsar in his palace. Him and his family, they couldn't leave the palace. Then they moved them out of the palace to another like country house somewhere. Then they moved them again to another house somewhere off in the fucking woods. Okay. And so this was doing all the fighting and shit. And so one day or one night they woke them up. They told them, all right, everybody get your shit. We leaving again. We finna move you again. So they had already moved 3 times. So they're like, yo, we're moving again. Let's go. So they led everybody to a downstairs basement in a closed off room. It was 11 people that they had in the room, and they brought in 11 people with guns, and they shot them all. So they shot the Tsar first. I think shot him in the head, and so everybody, like, he's the only one that died right away. Everybody else was still alive after the initial shots, and so they were laying there bleeding and shit. And so the soldiers came over and they started bayoneting them, like stabbing them with the bayonets and hitting them with the butts of the gun to try to finish them off. That didn't work, and so they were going person by person, like still kind of shooting. And whenever somebody would moan or some shit, they would shoot them. As they kind of took the bodies out one by one, like if somebody would moan, like one of the girls didn't, like, it was still people that was alive after they did all of that, and so they would shoot them or bayonet them or stab them. Um, Apparently, some of the soldiers had sex with the dead bodies of the daughters, and then they crushed their skulls and threw them all in like a pit, and then caved the pit. So I gave you guys a brief overview of the shit that I had to endure.
See, you understand why they kicked the Khazarians out of everywhere. That's crazy.
Yeah. Um.
So why not just kill them all? Why torture the 10, why torture them?
Um.
Sometimes this melody enough is just not enough. You know. Sometimes I gotta come for you, everything you got, and your kids. You know.
I think too. They
The
didn't kill.
kids and the
They was
dog, everybody dying, no
they was
lying.
trying not to kill them girls because they wanted to have sex with them before they died.
Well, they did that too. So again, I left that part out. So I guess they had the czar tied up, and the soldiers were raping the daughters in front of them. Like I said, I tried to leave some of this shit out.
Linnell, you had said, like, I heard everything you had said when you were describing what they were doing. You said
Hmm.
that, except for the last thing, you said that they covered the holes and then did what to the holes?
So they they threw them like in these caves, and then exploded the caves so that the bodies couldn't be found.
Damn. All right.
Right. Yeah. So that's when in the last clip when he talked about the murder of the czar in such a brutal fashion. That's the brutal fashion that he was referring to. And so the thing is, they didn't even tell the public about everything. So they said so. They made it seem like the czar tried to escape a couple times, and people were trying to rescue him, and like it was just this big ordeal. And so they came up with a story. They just said he had been shot. They didn't say what the circumstances were. They said, "Oh, the czar has been shot." And then people asked, "Well, what about the family?" "Oh, they're put up in the house." So they lied about what happened. They didn't tell the people exactly what happened to the family or why the czar was shot. The other thing to keep in mind is this: the czar was cousins with King George, right? And so the czar and the family, I'm sure they were hoping that King George came to get them because they're family. But King George has a central bank, and I'm certain he knew what would happen if he went against the people that ran his central bank. Like what just happened to Nicholas could easily happen to him, and so he was too scared to make a move, most likely.
Wasn't he involved? Didn't he kill the cousin?
You said
There
wasn't
was
he
like,
in?
wasn't he involved? Wasn't all the cousins involved in killing that family off?
I don't think so. So they were at war, but I don't think he was involved. Like, just yeah, I don't think so.
So
I,
so you took so Linnell, you also I didn't know that he was cousins with King George because now all of those European nations they're all cousins because he was also cousins with William the
Wilhelm,
Second.
yeah, they were all cousins.
Okay.
Yeah, the three of them were cousins. They all look just a fucking like. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a fight between the cousins.
Yeah, no, they fought. They definitely fought, right? And so they were at war. But I don't know if he was involved. Like, dude, when you're at that level, when you lose a war, like you abdicate, but you go off into exile. Like they didn't kill each other. Like, yo, you would lose the war, you would have to lay down your sword or whatever the fuck. You would take your riches and you and your family would get the fuck on. Or you would lose land. They didn't fucking murder each other. Not unless they really, really, really hated each other. And these dudes didn't hate each other. Like they were actually really close. So what? Because the thing is, you know that he ain't had nothing to do with it because they lied to the ambassador. They didn't even tell the ambassador what happened. And when they asked, "Yo, how come?" Because when they told the ambassador that Nicholas was dead, he said, "Okay, what about the family?" And they was like, there was no answer. And so later on, when he saw one of the people who gave him information that came back from Russia, he said, "Hey, yo, what happened to the family?" And he told him, "Yeah, they all dead." And he said, "Yo, how come you didn't tell me when I asked you?" He said, "Lenin thought it would be easier for you to lie if you didn't know." So no matter, because the George wouldn't have had the family killed, the kids, the wife, like everybody, they didn't operate like that. That's why when you say, was George involved? I highly doubt it. That's not how they operated.
No, I feel you.
You know what I mean?
You remember I told you about Dr. Cruz?
Yeah.
I was just listening to him today, ironically, this afternoon, and he was explaining this whole story as well too. And he was saying that there was a feud, and the cousin they had that particular family killed off. So it was ironically just something I heard today. Not to say
Yeah, no, I
it's
get you. I get you.
so
Did he
that's
say
why I
why?
asked if I'm literally going through the transcript right now, seeing if there was a specific reason as to why.
Yeah, he would have needed a specific reason why to kill off not only Nicholas, who was his fucking cousin,
No, it was
but
the whole family, the bloodline. He would have
yeah,
got rid of the whole bloodline.
yeah. All right, cool.
Um,
That's what's up. Um, the other reason um I don't think George had anything to do with it, well, is because of what happened next, right? Like all the shit that happened. So what happened next? Maybe lets me think, no, this ain't him. Right? This ain't got shit to do with the war. All right. Um. All right. What were we talking about? Oh, we were just talking about what happened to the family. So yeah, this is one of them things I opted not to because there's a very descriptive narration of what happened. That's one of them things I opted not to kind of go into. Like I said, I had to go to sleep.
What
Um,
is it, the original Game of Thrones or something?
not too fucking far off. This was much worse. Okay. So after the Bolsheviks take complete control of the fucking country, all right. So now this is when it gets interesting. No, it's not interesting. I don't know. I don't know what word I would use here.
Due to an increased amount of people fighting for the Jewish-controlled Bolsheviks a heartless methodology was implemented in the regions in and around Tambov City and Penza City to seize grains and crops during the summer. The Bolsheviks also seized livestock, farms, and their implements. These purposely imposed taxations and grain seizures were used as a psychological weapon of war to increase the levels of starvation in hopes of instigating native resistance, which would then provide a plausible excuse for the Bolshevik authorities to use lethal force against the population. Beatings and rape were also used as a weapon to put fear into the people and keep them in line when things got out of hand. In the city of Tambov, the Bolshevik authorities were also accused of deliberately leaving cartloads of grain in the open air to rot. The Tambov massacre had all the characteristics of a dry run in which the Bolshevik Red Army first exercised all its dreadful force against the civilian population, revealing that Lenin had discovered a powerful weapon against the ethnic European Christian people. They didn't torture and oppress people because they thought they had to, but because they could. The Red Terror was a campaign of mass torture, murder, and systematic oppression conducted by the Jewish Bolsheviks during 1918. The Cheka and the Red Army executed numerous European farmers. At Odessa, the Cheka tied white officers to planks and slowly fed them into furnaces or tanks of boiling water. In Kharkiv, scalpings and hand flayings were commonplace.
All right. So as soon as they got control of the country, right, the first thing they did was figure out a reason or a way to kill off the people. They wanted to kill off the people and get rid of the church, right, the Christian church. And so their idea was, well, what makes people mad? What would cause people to get buck to where, we could have a reason to kill them off? Starvation and famine. So if we kept them hungry and pissed off by raping and torturing, cutting off hands, flaying skins, scalping motherfuckers, if we do all this, they're more likely to fight back. And if they fight back, we have an excuse to kill them. Because remember, they're trying to get rid of the Christians and the non-Talmudic Jews. So it wasn't just Jews. It wasn't just Christians. So they wanted to get rid of the church, get rid of the Christians, get rid of the churches, right? And even the Jews that didn't fuck with what they was on. All right. So it's pretty straightforward. Got me? And so we go on.
You are starving? This is not famine yet. When your women start eating their children, then you may come and say we are starving. Despite hundreds of documented instances of this very thing occurring across the now barren land, the situation had evolved from a power grab to an attempted genocide. Lenin even outlined the need for famine by stating, destroying the peasant economy and driving the peasant from the country to the town, the famine creates a proletariat. Lenin's goal was nothing short of crushing the church and every last vestige of religious belief and Western tradition. Those who dared to fight back were tortured and killed without compunction. It is precisely now and only now, when in the starving regions people are eating human flesh and hundreds, if not thousands of corpses are littering the roads, that we can, and therefore must, carry out the confiscation of church valuables with the most savage and merciless energy, not stopping short of crushing any resistance. He continued, the greater the number of representatives of the reactionary clergy and reactionary bourgeoisie we succeed in executing for this reason, the better.
So Lenin's like, you're starving. What do you mean you're starving? You're not even eating your own children yet. You can't be that hungry. Are you eating the dead? You eating the dead people yet? No, you ain't hungry. So we talk about. We've been talking about this for a minute, right? The whole 15-minute cities. How they want people in the cities because they're more controllable. That's literally what he just said. He didn't want people in the countryside. He didn't want them on farms. He wanted them in cities where they can be monitored and controlled, and they weren't independent. Because if you're independent, like if you can grow your own food, you're independent. And if it's a bunch of y'all out there, then y'all don't really need us. You don't really need the government, and that makes you dangerous. And so he didn't want those people out there farming and living independently. So they went through and they took all the food. They took all the horses, they took all the livestock, and they didn't leave them with shit. And told them, if you were fucking hungry, you wouldn't have kids because you'd have been ate them already. Fuck is you talking about? All right. So this is Lenin. Okay. In addition to making people, to gauging people's suffering by determining, by figuring out, yo, have you eaten your children yet? It was also uh, way more torture than what you would need.
Quote, priests were crucified and had their eyes gouged out and tongues cut off. Their churches were burned to the ground or turned into toilet houses or synagogues. Some of the victims were boiled alive. Others were placed in boxes with rats or had hot lead poured into their mouths. Babies were cut out of pregnant women and slaughtered in front of the mothers. Some victims had their stomachs cut open and their intestines nailed to a pole, and then were forced to run around the pole until their guts unraveled and they died. Sometimes the next day's victim was forced to watch. Children were tortured in front of their parents, women in front of their husbands. End quote.
So it's a sport for them. All right. Figuring out ways to torture people is a sport. Figuring out ways to kill people is a sport. Okay. Um, yeah. We say sounds like England medieval times. Hey, Lise, if I had to take a guess on who was doing that shit in the medieval times, you know who I would guess was doing it, right?
Them,
Yeah. If I had to take a
I
guess
think
on who was doing that shit, I would guess it was them doing it.
I be thinking they ain't human. Like they came from somewhere else. Cause just to do that and that's just like, oh, let's do this. Like something
Mm.
wrong. Something wrong. That ain't no the kind of blood we got. That's not it.
Mm. Well, it's not over with. There's more.
Quote, in Kharkov, people were scalped. In Voronezh, the torture victims were placed in barrels into which nails were hammered so that they stuck out on the inside, upon which the barrels were set rolling. A pentacle, usually a five-pointed star formerly used in magic, was burned into the foreheads of the victims. In Sartsin and Kamnishin, the hands of victims were amputated with a saw. In Poltava and Kremenchug, the victims were impaled. In Odessa, they were roasted alive in ovens or ripped into pieces. In Kiev, the victims were placed in coffins with a decomposing body and buried alive, only to be dug up again after half an hour. Such were the atrocities that were committed by the Bolsheviks.
Okay. So it wasn't until I heard him describing all the ways that they were torturing and killing people. And then he talked about how they put people in ovens. Did it like it dawned on me? We've been going like we talk about kind of like World War II and the Holocaust. I've been talking about this shit for years, right? And how the stories about it were a lie. Like there's no evidence for any of the shit that they say happened in World War II, right? All the shit they say happened um, during the Holocaust and all the concentration camps. It wasn't until I started learning about all the shit that happened here did it dawn on me that in true gaslight fucking fashion, these motherfuckers took the shit they did in Russia and fucking attributed that shit to the Germans during World War II. When you listen to all the shit that happened here, like I've heard all these fucking stories about concentration camps, cutting babies out of stomachs and cutting off hands and experimenting on motherfuckers and doing all kinds of shit. These are Holocaust stories. They fucking projected and attributed all the shit they did in the Bolshevik Revolution and just put that shit on the Germans in World War II. Like all of it. And this ain't the first time I've heard something like this from them.
Oh, they went from being the Bolsheviks to back to being the Jews that were persecuted. Is
Right.
that ah?
Exactly.
So they were Jews, became Bolsheviks, and then decided, wait, we're Jews again, and we're being okay.
Well, no, it
Interesting.
was more of yo, we're all the shit that we did. Well, shit, we went through.
Hmm.
So yeah, so it's in World War II. They're like, well, what happened? And then they just all the stories they remembered from then. No, they just put that shit on them, and they don't really talk about the Bolshevik Revolution no more. All they talk about is the Holocaust because this is what they did to people. This is what they did to the Christians, and so they're pretending like it got done to them. All right. Yeah, it has
Hmm.
the original gaslighters, right? Literally gaslighting. Literally. You know what I mean? So it was at this point that I was like, oh, this is where they got the stories from. Because they think that everybody would do what they would do. So they just made up some story. Well, they just took the stories about what they did and attributed it to other people. And that's how you get your stories from the Holocaust. Got you. Say less. Say fucking
And it
less.
would make sense. Hey, look, it would make sense because remember Wilhelm the Second's.
Hey, you low, bro. You low.
Ele- hold on. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, no. I want to
So,
hear what you were saying.
no, I said the that's makes it interesting because you when you go connect Hitler who funded him, you will have to connect with Wilhelm the Prince of Prussia or the last prince of Germany, and he because he wanted to revenge what happened to his father because exactly what you said. If you look at what happened at the end of World War II, he was captured and he was executed in front of everyone. But then you say when you look at who funded him, so I'm like, yo, this make that kind of connects because if these cousins were kind of low key beefing and doing all this weird stuff, Wilhelm just got taken out just the same way he got taken out. That same story of the Bolkovich, whatever I can't even speak right
Yeah, the
now.
Bolsheviks. Yeah.
Bolshevich, the same way, the same execution, except that it wasn't done with a gun. It was done with the old fashioned way.
Hmm. Oh yeah. Um. So while this was going on, they were um they weren't telling people what they were doing. Surprise, so fucking prize. So they weren't telling people what was going on in the country. Cause so other countries were getting stories. They were hearing that there was famine. But the Bolsheviks were like, no, no, there's no famine at all. We're good. I mean, because in reality, remember, Ukraine, that area of Russia at the time, like it's the breadbasket of Europe. They have land like a motherfucker. They know how to grow. So one of the peoples that actually settled in Russia were the Mennonites. They settled during the era of Catherine the Great. She made a deal with them that they could settle there, and they wouldn't have to join the military, so they couldn't be drafted, and so they couldn't be drafted, and they could kind of live like under their own rules, kind of like what the Amish do in America. So the Mennonites and the Anabaptists made that deal with Catherine the Great, and in return, they would come in, farm the land, and show all the Russians how to farm the land as well. So the land was great. It was a farming oasis. So there was no reason there should have been famine. And so people heard, oh, there's a famine there. Oh my God. And so they started sending food there. And the Bolsheviks were like, no, 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 we cool. The bullshit, they were so fucking bad. They would go to a farm, take all the food, take all the grain, and let that shit sit in the middle of the field and let it rot. And dare somebody to go and try to eat some of it. And so when all this was happening, there was a reporter. He actually snuck into the country because he wanted to see what was going on for himself because he had heard stories, right? And so he snuck in to see what was going on.
During the height of the famine, a British traveller named Gareth Jones, who was to die soon after under mysterious circumstances at the age of 30, braved the travel ban and spent 3 weeks touring the devastation. After speaking honestly about his findings in lectures in Berlin and London, the new Bolshevik head of the Soviet press office, Konstantin Umansky, sprang into action. Holding secret meetings with journalists in the hotel room of a correspondent, the new Bolshevik head of the Soviet press office, Umansky, demanded they use their position to denounce Jones's report under penalty of losing their credentials. One of the most willing propagandists for the Bolshevik party line was Louis Fischer. Though he had spent much of his life in Palestine as a member of the Jewish Legion, followed by travels across Europe, he was an American citizen and contributor to the Progressive and the New York Evening Post. At the peak of the famine, he'd pen, "I think there is no starvation anywhere," and incredibly blamed the food shortages on Ukrainian nationalists. He would be one of the first to publicly counter Jones's first-hand reports, stating emphatically, "There is no starvation in Russia." One of the most complicit media institutions was the New York Times. NYT reporter Walter Duranty penned an article stating, "There is no actual starvation or deaths from starvation, and though conditions are bad, there is no famine." He crassly dismissed hardships caused by Soviet policy routinely and would go on to write, "You can't make an omelet without breaking eggs."
All right. So here we got more use of the fucking media to control the narrative. Like throughout this whole thing, the media has played a huge role in controlling the narrative and controlling what people think. And so there was a journalist that he snuck in the country. He toured for 3 weeks. He was in there for 3 weeks, went around, saw all the fucking shit, went back and wrote about it. And what did the Bolsheviks do? It wasn't the Bolsheviks. It was the people that fund them. Because remember, they were funded by the fucking by the billionaires, the bankers, who also own the newspapers and shit. And so they enacted one of their emissaries, another reporter, to counteract what he was writing and talking about. And they were telling people, yo, anybody that publishes this shit, any reporter that goes along with this shit, we're going to fucking punish you. We're going to revoke your credentials. We're going to make it very hard for you to get work. That's how powerful the media is. So another example of how the media is used, why they control the media. This is why they control the media. Okay. So they talked about one of the oh no. It was around this time that Lenin goes to visit y'all remember the um what was it, Pavlov's dogs? Y'all remember the Pavlov dog experiment? The guy that trained a dog that whenever he heard the bell, his mouth would start salivating, even though there was no food. That Pavlov, Lenin goes to visit him because he's got an idea. He needs some help trying to figure out how to make something happen. And so he goes to see Pavlov.
In October 1919, Lenin paid a secret visit to the laboratory of great physiologist I.P. Pavlov, a Russian physiologist known chiefly for the concept of conditional reflex. In his classic experiment, he found that a hungry dog can be trained to associate the sound of a bell with food and will salivate at the sound even in the absence of food. Lenin wanted to find out if his work on the conditional reflexes of the brain might help the Bolsheviks control European behavior. Quote, "I want the masses of Russia to follow a communistic pattern of thinking and reacting," Lenin explained. Pavlov was astounded. It seemed that Lenin wanted him to do for humans what he had already done for dogs. Quote, "Do you mean that you would like to standardize the population of Russia? Make them all behave in the same manner?" he asked. "Exactly," replied Lenin. "Man can be corrected. Man can be made what we want him to be." Unquote. Not only did the Bolsheviks engage in a physical war, but also a psychological one. They wanted all of the people of Europe to respect them, whether through fear or through consent.
So he wanted help on training people on how to behave, on how to induce responses responses to certain stimuli. That's how that was the idea of how to spread this communist idea. Not only throughout Russia, but throughout Europe. And it worked. Because when you look at all the fucking countries, especially the globalist countries, the Western countries, communism is deep rooted, especially in society. Like if you actually took a look at how the public responds to certain stimuli. Like every day I come here and I play clip after clip of people behaving in the most absurd manner, whether it be a response to um uh Eli, I mean not Eli, Elon, a response to Trump, a response to something regarding the LGBT, a response to something regarding vaccines or the shutdown, right? Like the response mechanism is programmed. It may not have been Lenin himself that did it, but the globalists took the ideas and implicated them shits all throughout the world, especially the world that's connected to the media, because that's how they did it. It was Lenin's visit to Pavlov that sparked that idea that humans can be trained to have a fucking trigger response to certain stimuli. and it worked. Just look at all your look at your homies when you say the earth is flat, or look at strangers when you say the earth is flat. Instant response. They've been trained to do that. That's training. Look at when you say something that goes against the mainstream narrative, look at the response of people. They've been trained to do that. That's not natural. It's not normal. That's a trained fucking response to stimuli that doesn't comport with the fucking programming. All right. So they talked about a uprising in Tamov. So there was some ex-army soldiers in Tamov, and they got together. They used pitchforks and rakes and shit, and they ran off a bunch of soldiers. And after they ran off some of them soldiers, they went and they ran off some more soldiers, and people started joining them. And so they had all these. They had a kind of a revolution going, or a revolt. It's more of a revolt. This ain't a revolt. It was a revolt because it was really small and local. Okay, and so they were able to redirect some of these some soldiers to go and deal with the Tamov revolt. And so, uh, as a response to the revolt, they's like, you know what? I have an idea. This is what we're going to do. And so they lay down a list of directives on how to deal with this revolt. And so these were the directives that they laid out.
Order number 171, dated 11th of June 1921 and signed by Vladimir Overzenko, shows clearly the sorts of methods used to pacify Tambov province. It stipulated: 1. Shoot on sight any citizens who refuse to give their names. 2. District and regional political commissions are hereby authorized to pronounce sentence on any village where arms are being hidden, and to arrest hostages and shoot them if the whereabouts of their arms are not revealed. 3. Wherever arms are found, execute immediately the oldest son in the family. 4. Any family that has harbored a bandit is to be arrested and deported from the province. Their possessions are to be seized. The oldest son is to be executed immediately. 5. Any families sheltering other families who have been harboring bandits are to be punished in the same manner, and their oldest son is to be shot. 6. In the event that the bandit family has fled, their possessions are to be redistributed among peasants who are loyal to the Soviet Bolshevik regime, and their houses are to be burned or demolished. 7. These orders are to be carried out rigorously and without mercy.
Tell me this ain't a story you would hear about the Holocaust and the fucking Nazis. Like, that gave the opening scene to Inglourious Bastards. Or any other fucking movie about the Holocaust you ever seen. Everything that they described was some shit that you would hear about what happened in the Holocaust. You know what I mean? Ultimate gaslighting. So remember, what they wanted to take these people's land. They didn't want them to have food. They wanted them to freaking leave. Right? They wanted them to go to the cities where they would become dependent on the government. That's what they needed. That's what they were pushing for. They wanted them to revolt so they could kill them. They wanted to get rid of all the fucking Christian churches. Y'all know what I learned in this? Y'all know how they have uh like when they kill a bunch of people, they'll throw them in like these big holes and then kind of burn them or some shit. They got these big mass graves. So this lady was telling the story about how their mother went somewhere to work, that she had to go away to work, and she was going to be gone for a week. While she was gone, so it was like 3 girls or some shit. She left the kids at the house. One of the kids died, and they would send people to the door every day to go and see, yo, you got any dead bodies? Anybody here died? And so they would say no, because they didn't want them to take the little girl's body. So the mother got back. They told them what happened. She died, and then they went and they buried the girl off somewhere. And she said they wouldn't let us, like, if they had told them that they had a dead body, they wouldn't have let them bury her. Okay, because according to the Talmud, so if you're not Jewish, then you're goyim, right? You're like an animal, and animals can't be buried. And so the reason that they don't bury none of these people is because you're animals, right? So I learned that. That was pretty interesting. Where we at? Oh, so we're back to them hijacking land and food.
The
Where they put the
Bolsheviks set
body at?
about systematically cleansing the nation of their
Oh
ideological
shit!
foes.
You said what, bro?
Where did they put the body at until the mom got back?
They probably left it in the bedroom or something, or on the bed, fucking wrapped up. I don't know. She just said we kept the body in the house.
The Bolsheviks set about systematically cleansing the nation of their ideological foes.
Activists, a group of people, if they could be called people, came into the house and looked over everything and made us very frightened. Then they said, "Get out. This isn't your house anymore." But Mother wouldn't leave. "At least let us spend the rest of the winter here," she begged. "Where can I go with these children and old people?" The men picked her up and threw her outside. A militiaman or activist stood in the doorway as a guard. Mother shouted to us, "Children, don't leave the house." There were tears and screams. It was frightening. We grabbed hold of the benches in the house, screaming and refusing to let go. Then the men began to take us out one by one. They would throw one of us outside and then another. Thus, they threw us out of the house, one by one, all 6 of us.
Passing numerous laws and regulations crippling the kulak farmers that had been the breadbasket of both Russia and Ukraine, they now went a step further and began confiscating farms, then machinery, and then the people themselves, loading them into sealed boxcars to be sent to the most remote corners of Russia, some being let loose to die with only the shirts on their backs, others sent to gulag slave labor camps.
The survivors work as slave labor, producing raw materials for export to the West.
Though the kulak may have epitomized the object of their hatred, the Ukrainian peasants, along with the Orthodox Christian Russian peasants, many of whom had supported the Tsar, weren't far behind.
This is the end of the line for many of the best farmers and cultural and religious leaders of Ukraine.
What was for many years portrayed as an accident of incompetence and poor leadership, the mass famine that would soon cause tens of millions of innocent civilians to die, has now been shown to be a purposeful, willful act. Borders were sealed off, and men went from home to home confiscating every last scrap of food. Those who protested were killed under the guise of being enemies of the people. A regulation was passed to protect state property, which allowed the new regime to shoot starving civilians, many of whom were children who attempted to pick so much as a single stalk of wheat in the fields. In less than 2 years, over 10 million died, 7 million in Ukraine alone, and at least 3 million of these were children. Despite still producing enough grain in a year to feed their people for 2 years, the people watched helplessly as officials confiscated and hid it away in sealed mills and silos, selling a large portion off to Western governments to present an optimistic picture of the economy. Kinsmen of the victims, especially the beleaguered Germans, made numerous desperate attempts to send in aid from the outside, The trucks were turned away by the Red Cross at the border, with the new Soviet regime claiming there was no famine and that aid was an insult. As the people continued to starve, much of the confiscated grain rotted away, unused.
Cardinal Initzer initiates relief in Austria. Metropolitan Sheptitsky in western Ukraine. But all shipments of food grind to a halt at the Soviet border. The Soviet Red Cross flatly denies the existence of famine. The hands of the international organization are tied.
Cats, dogs, horses, and other animals disappeared from the streets, and soon even children began to go missing. As a directive was issued prohibiting any mention of cannibalism, the government gave carefully guided show tours to celebrities and heads of state, and produced propaganda videos showing ecstatic farmers singing and dancing.
So the first part of the clip, when the lady was talking about how they came and they kicked them out of their house. It's like, yeah, you don't live here no more. Yo, that shit is happening in Gaza right now. Right now. People going to the store, coming back, and these people taking their, like, it's somebody in their house. Like, nah, this is my house now.
Yeah. It
Like
also
everything that's happening that's happening then is happening now.
it also sounds like squatters' rights.
That ain't even squatters' rights. I'm here. Like, I'm in my house. You ain't squatting.
I
But
know.
that's what they did here in the Americas. So they took a book out of the play that they did here. As they walked up to our buildings, as they walked up to our homes, as they walked up to our multi-story, which you schools versus apartments or jails versus apartments, and said it's ours now. So I mean, they just took a book out of what they did here in the Americas.
Yo, this is what they do. This is, it's like, yo, it's a play. All right, we're gonna run play 3 on 4, break, and then they're gonna run it. What you say? Wash, rinse, repeat. Same shit. Um, and so sadly, because I know it, like everybody, they think, all right, if I was back then, um, yo, I would try to help out, right? Like, you know what, we could get together, we can figure it out. A lot of people survived, so you know, I think I could get through it. You know, I think we always get through it. Like, we always get through it. So I'm not worried about it. And so as long as you're a good person, um, you can figure it out. Sadly, somebody really disagrees with that.
Survival was a moral as well as a physical struggle. A woman doctor wrote to a friend in June of 1933 that she had not yet become a cannibal, but that she was not sure whether she would become one by the time the letter reached. The good people died first. Those who refused to steal or to prostitute themselves died. Those who gave food to others died. Those who refused to eat corpses died. Those who refused to kill their fellow man died. Parents who resisted cannibalism died before their children did. The only horrors worse than the Holodomor, as the Great Famine would come to be known as across the world, were those inflicted by the Cheka and the NKVD, the secret police and enforcement arms of the Bolshevik regime. Tortures and atrocities far too brutal to be pictured or even mentioned here. What had been a nation on its way to becoming a dominant and well-respected world power after 300 years of studious rule, with the world's largest gold supply, a wealth of natural resources, and a breadbasket region of immensely efficient farmers, had been turned into a horrific and brutal chaos, almost overnight.
The good people died first, is what she wrote. I'm not a cannibal yet, but by the time this letter reaches you, I might be. If you don't eat corpses, dogs, if you don't steal or kill or prostitute yourself, you could probably fucking die. This is what they wanted. This is the world that they like. Right? This is the vibration that they like. Right? Whenever they take over, it's always some cannibalism some fucking where. There's always some prostitution. Even in the middle of a revolution, they're like, they fomented prostitution. It's got to be around here somewhere. All right. It just comes along with the territory everywhere they fucking go. Cannibalism and prostitution. It's peanut butter and jelly. Every time you hear a story, same shit. So around when was this? Around 1922. There was a bit of a change. All right. Um, so one of the things I forgot to talk about was around 1919. The Bolsheviks actually, so instead of, they didn't just stay in Russia, they actually started invading other countries. So they invaded Estonia, which borders them, Latvia, which borders them, and a couple other fucking countries, right? They started invading and killing off peasants. So because they did it by surprise, like these countries, they weren't even expecting it. There were no hostilities or nothing. They just kind of invaded, right? They got a hold to, like, they would invade a country. If they got a hold to the monarchs or the royals, um, or the elite, they would kill them. They, in the same manner in which they killed the Tsar and his family. They even sometimes crucified fucking people. In 1919, they were crucifying people. Okay.
Now, where did they come from originally? If you said it, I wasn't here.
No, it's cool. So some of them live there, right? But they, so remember, throughout history, they get kicked out of places. So they were probably in neighboring countries and shit, and they flooded in because Lenin and Trotsky were passing out money, and they got word that there was going to be a revolution and an opportunity to gain fucking power. And so if they weren't already there, they came in from most of them came in from other countries though. All right. They, so remember, they don't have a country, and so they're always in Poland and Germany and fucking France, Austria, Estonia, like they're everywhere. Like,
But how did they become a people? Maybe I don't know. That's kind of
so remember, so it's a religion, right?
yeah.
It's a
Okay.
religion. Now they do keep track of bloodlines, and so they know, yo, I'm an Ashkenazi, for example. Like they keep track of their people.
So
Get me?
yeah, but where did the Ashkenazis originate? Like ethnically though, or geographically?
Geographically, in like Turkey, some fucking where I think.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Um.
Ukraine. Or
Oh
South
shit.
Because I
Africa.
think
Pastor
they
gonna tell us.
traveled to like the Middle East from somewhere else, but I don't
They
know.
originate from the Khazarian Empire, which is the Ukraine of today.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Yeah.
Good shit. Oh, Ron said don't give them Turkey. Okay. So that's allegedly where they start, and then they kind of move around and branch out from there. Good shit, has.
Right. Hey,
Um.
yo, real quick. Hey,
Yeah.
peace, now,
What up,
my
bro?
brother. Yeah, I just gotta say, yeah, just what you said earlier. This feels like an old cook, right? But yeah, just from my view, right, with this Ukraine shit, like they never told any of us the importance, truly, other than the UN and all of that other bullshit, right? I just what Hessa said. I think the same thing that they know. Of course, they know that that's their like that's their ancestors. One of the regions they used to live in, like up to Kiev, right? And word is Kiev has pyramids and stuff like that too. But yeah, I think along those lines too.
Good shit, bro. Um. All right. Let's see. Oh, Sunra said Turkey was the Ottoman Empire. Good looking out, Sunra. All right. So so that was 1919 when they were fucking crucifying people in Estonia and Latvia. They're crucifying the royals and shit. Like Jesus Christ. 1922. Lenin is his health is failing, and we get another like somebody else steps into the scene to assume power.
In 1922, Lenin would suffer the first of several strokes, which affects his health and his ability to lead. Lenin dictates his political testament, a series of letters containing his views about the future of Soviet Russia, the Communist Party, and its potential leaders. And on the 3rd of April 1922, Stalin is appointed General Secretary of the Communist Party. By the 29th of December, the Treaty on the creation of the USSR united its signatories. The Russian and Transcaucasian SFSRs and the Belarusian and Ukrainian SSRs are under the power of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. By the end of this year, the creation of the Soviet Union is made official. With Russia now in control of its former enemies and its surrounding neighbours, very little could be done to stop the Soviet Union. At the turn of 1923, the relationship between Stalin and Lenin breaks down after Stalin is rude and insulting to Krupskaya, Lenin's wife. However, the hostilities are soon put to rest by the month of March, when Lenin suffers a third stroke that leaves him paralysed and barely able to speak. By the month of May, Lenin is removed to a party sanatorium and given the responsibility for attending to his security, medical needs, and well-being. On the 21st of January 1924, Lenin dies, leading to a power struggle within the party. However, Stalin emerges as a party leader. Stalin himself was also a crypto-Jew. His real name is Losif Vissarionovich Dzhugavali, and the pseudonym Stalin actually means Man of Steel, sort of like Superman. The Georgian-born Stalin adopted his pseudonym in 1910 as what was likely an effort to, first, be intimidating, and second, to shield his real identity from the police while he was involved in an evasive revolutionary activity. Stalin met Lenin in 1905, and the two already knew each other and had been working together for 5 years before Stalin adopted his new name. So both men knew very well of each other's Jewish roots. Stalin's place of birth, Gori, was home to the largest Georgian Jewish population at that time, with Jewish groups such as Legashvili being one of the largest groups of Jews in the country of Georgia. Something to highlight is Stalin's original surname, at birth, was Jugashvili, and as we know, this name means son of a Jew. It is also known that Joseph Stalin had at least 3 Jewish wives, which meant that his children were also Jewish. He also spoke Yiddish around his family.
So they did that thing again that I don't like, right? That we talked about, where they made Jewish a race. You know what I mean? Um, you're not born a religion. However, it's the bloodline, right? So he's in the bloodline. That's what they're trying to say. That he can trace his bloodline back to where it needs to go. Okay. Um. Now, oddly enough, um, this is where it kind of takes. Well, hold on. What you say, Billy? It was a bloodline, but it was not theirs to claim. So they're not talking about that. They're talking about their bloodline, right? So I know what you're talking about. That's not what they're talking about. They're talking about their bloodline, right? They're keeping track of their personal bloodline for a reason, right? They're not talking about from the stories. All right. There's a reason that they keep track of their own bloodline and who's related to who, because they want to know if you're in the bloodline. So when they say, "Oh, he was born Jewish," that they're not talking about the religion. That just means he's in the bloodline. That's what they're talking about. But they don't. Thing is, they don't. They're hiding what it is that, what the importance of it. Right? They don't want you to know the specifics. There's some specific important shit that comes with being a part of the bloodline. All right. It's important enough for them to keep track of it, and because they can't say what it is, they can't say, "Oh yeah, he's in the bloodline." They'll just say, "Oh yeah, he's Jewish." Jewish is a fucking religion. That don't make no fucking sense. Don't gotta make sense. It makes sense to them. It's their way of saying he's in the bloodline. Right. Um. So, you know what? My timing is impeccable. So the whole time I was kind of going through this, like I'm going through the information, I'm looking up stuff. Um, I've been trying to figure out, how do we go from the Bolsheviks, and the fuck shit that they're doing, to the Russia that we have today. Like I was like, yo, how the fuck do we? Because y'all know I fucks with Putin. Like I watch Putin, I listen to him. I like the way he carry himself. I'm like, and remember, Putin is not a fucking globalist, and these motherfuckers are globalists, right? They hijacked. So the Tsar was not a globalist; he was a nationalist. Putin came in. I mean, Putin today is not a fucking not a globalist. And so I'm like, yo, how do we go from a nationalist getting taken out by the globalists who came in with the vengeance and clearly took over the country, to now we back to a nationalist? How do we get here? And so I was confused. I was like, yeah, what the fuck? Like, how do we get here? And so this next clip is where the switch comes in, right? This is where um you see the tables kind of turn from one thing to the other. And I was like, oh, okay, I got you. So this explains how we get the Russia that we got today.
Despite anti-Semitism being punishable by death in Soviet Russia at this time, Stalin was often accused of anti-Semitism, as he did implement measures to limit Jewish influence within his military officer ranks and political ranks. However, this was not out of hatred of Jews, as Stalin himself, who was a Jew, was still very much working towards the political expediency and the progress of those Jews who laid before him after the Bolshevik Revolution, but rather as an attempt to rid the party of any Trotsky influence that may have remained behind. Since it was Trotsky himself who put the generals in the army, it seemed like a good idea to Stalin. It wasn't the Jewishness that Stalin was distancing himself from, but the method of outcome. Trotsky had a global end goal, which Stalin initially shared even after Lenin had passed away. However, Stalin eventually transitioned himself to a more nationalist outlook and was more concerned with internal industrialization. To call Stalin anti-Semitic would be a dishonest assertion, as at least up until 1934, according to published statistics by the Soviet Union, 38.5% of those holding the most senior posts in the Soviet security apparatus were of Jewish origin, with many more being Freemasons.
Yo, so Stalin, who took over for Lenin, so Lenin was an ultimate globalist, put in by the globalist fucking bankers. Stalin was appointed secretary of the party. The part that that I didn't kind of get into, because it was a lot of minutia, is that Stalin actually had to maneuver to become the fucking ruler. Like, it wasn't Lenin chose him and then he kind of ascended to power. No, he had to maneuver. He had to maneuver against Trotsky. He ended up having Trotsky kicked out the country. Right. So it wasn't just, oh, Trotsky, Like Trotsky didn't ride off into the sunset. He had Trotsky kicked out the country, and eventually he had him killed in Mexico. Trotsky ran from Stalin. Remember, Trotsky was also put there by the globalists, and Trotsky ran out the country. He ended up in Mexico, and he got killed. And Stalin ended up switching sides from the globalist side um, to the nationalist side. And so all that work they did, that the bankers did to flip Russia into a globalist cabal, Stalin came in and was like, yeah, fuck all that. And he got rid of Lenin's guys who were globalists, and he replaced them with his guys. And through all of this shit, so remember, it was a bunch of fucking Jews in the upper echelon and in leadership. When Stalin came in, that shit went down. It ended up being almost what 40% from damn near 100% to like 40%. He was so bad at it, they thought he was a fucking anti-Semitic. He Jewish as fuck, quote unquote. And they're like, yo, you don't like Jews? It's like, nah, it's just we're not doing that. We're not on this globalist shit. And he switched to a nationalist fucking posture. And that's what Russia is today. Russia has always maintained a nationalist posture. Ever since then, it's had a nationalist posture. It hasn't had a globalist posture. And that's been the problem for the globalists. That's why they've been presented to us as an enemy, because the America has been run by globalists for a really long time, or had a heavy globalist influence, and Russia is not. And that's how we get to where we got to. And so even today, Russia has the same nationalist posture, right? Um, oh, we ain't got that much time because there was some shit I wanted to get to. Um, it was something in the yo, and so like there's more to the story with Stalin, right? There's more to the story with Stalin that literally bleeds into World War II, because you know how Hitler is accused of invading Poland, and that was the start of World War II. They say he invaded Poland and killed a bunch of Polish soldiers. Well, apparently that was Russia that did it. It was the Bolsheviks that did it and blamed it on fucking Hitler. They blamed that shit on Germany. That's what they talk about. They invaded fucking Poland. It was in like the Katian forest or some shit. Shit was wild. But again, so we ain't got time for that. We'll get to that when we talk about the Holocaust. So we'll do a Holocaust cook sometime soon. So we're I don't it's not gonna be Friday because uh it's not gonna be Friday because we got the JFK stuff that dropped. So we'll talk about that on Friday. Next week, nah, it's the week before we leave. I don't know what we're gonna do next week. I don't know. So hey, should we be off next week or the week after? No, it has to be the week after. Yeah. Yeah, we're not off next week. All right, so no. So we're here next week, and then the week after we're off. It's gonna be lit. All right. Miss Melody said, so this is when the heavy one. Yo, anybody got any questions? My bad. Anybody got any questions? I talked about a lot. I've been running my mouth for 4 hours.
Hey, I don't have any questions, but I appreciate the deep dive. I learned something new.
It's all good, brother. It's all good. Anybody got any comments? Thing they want to put out there.
You know, it's interesting that when you said the U.S. has been run by globalists for a long time, and it, it seemed like it just went full steam ahead after the Kennedy assassination.
Um, you know what? So full steam ahead. You know what? They kicked up their shit in the overdrive. So they were pot committed at that point, and so they definitely kicked it up.
Right, right.
They had just killed the fucking president, so they definitely kicked it up. So yes, you're right. Um, good stuff. Let me see if I got some positivity for y'all, man. Um, hmm. Let me see what I got for y'all. So I need something dope. What I got for y'all. Hold on, man. Let me see. Um, I don't want to leave y'all like this. Like I said, I couldn't even I stopped before I got into the meat of it. Right. I was like, yeah, I can't go to bed like this. So I got to do some other shit. Oh, you know what? How about this? This for y'all. Hey, we gonna get y'all out of here on this one, man. Um, yo,
Taste the biscuit. Taste the goodness of the biscuit. Taste the honey sauce. Taste the goodness of the biscuit with the honey sauce. Don't get that honey sauce on me. I don't like the way it tastes with my chicken wings. Taste the biscuit. Taste the goodness of the biscuit. Taste the butter spread. Taste the goodness of the biscuit with the butter spread. To get your butter
hey,
spread all on me. I don't
hey,
like the way it mixes with my mac and
hey.
cheese.
Uh, uh,
Cause when you're at KFC, you got that special sauce to stir my curiosity. Just give me a 5-piece meal. Oh, what a deal. A big old box, it's all for me. You know I'll take coleslaw on the side. I could tell you wanted to try the potato wedges.
hey, yo. The breakdown is wild. The breakdown is wild.
Extended version.
Hey, hey. Hey, yo.
That keyboard. That
Take it to the
keyboard tap.
bridge.
Oh,
That freaking
right.
yo, the bridge was lit. I can't even front.
Oh my god.
Jesus
All
Christ.
right. You get a pass,
Oh,
but
that
next
was
time,
funny.
come on.
All right, y'all. Hey, remember,
Mm-mm.
blackersuniform.com, man. Click the link up top. Check out Black is Uniform. Check out the Conspiracy Corner, Conspiracy University collections. Um, get your travel mug, certificate of achievement, man. Get that joint. We in the building. That being the case, I'm gonna see y'all on Friday. Like I said, I'm almost positive we're gonna do the JFK document dump. We'll see what's up in that joint. Talk about I don't know. See what we find. All right, we're gonna see y'all Friday, man. Peace.
But you need the right gear. Blackisuniform.com, you can get it right here. We talk flat earth and mud floods. You might hear about the dome. No matter the topic, you just need something with the shield on. Blackisuniform.com, where conspiracy analysts are at home. Blackisuniform.com, where conspiracy analysts are at home.
Bigger Sport is love and light in a bottle, a CBD infused salve that rids the body of pain, arthritis, carpal tunnel, and muscle aches. There's no job too great for Bigger Sport. Headaches, muscle spasms, and menstrual cramps are a thing of the past. Bigger Sport is the Swiss Army knife of your medicine cabinet. Order your jar today at vigorforpain.com.